Sarah Sues Santa. A Christmas Tale by P.J. Leonard. Part 2. For the rest of Christmas morning, Sarah's mood was very up and down. Sometimes she'd look at her stack of presents and be very happy and grateful. It was a very good collection of gifts, and definitely better than last year. But then she'd look at her diary of chores, and her fists would clench. After all of the work she'd done this year, she couldn't help but feel disappointed. She sat in the window ledge again, Uberwoman figure in her hands, and looking down at the street. Some of the kids were outside now, building snowmen and pushing sledges around. Why had Santa given her the old version of Uberwoman? Sure, it was basically the same thing. The figure itself was exactly the same. The only difference were those extra costumes and the glow-in-the-dark hair. But after spending all year being as good as possible, why couldn't Santa give her the one thing she'd asked for? Loads of the other kids had gotten this old Uberwoman last year, so it wasn't exactly special anymore. Sarah had seen this old version of Uberwoman in a lot of half-price sales this year. She sighed, and steam shot across the glass. "Sarah!" her dad called from downstairs. "Dinner's ready!" Sarah peeled herself away from the window and tossed the Uberwoman onto her bed. At the door, though, she stopped herself. "Come on! Cheer up! A lot of kids out there would love to get even one present for Christmas. You're very lucky. Mom and Dad have put a lot of effort into dinner, too. Go and put on your best smile for them." And so Sarah put on a smile as she opened the door and went downstairs. As always, the food was wonderful, and Sarah had a lot of fun pulling crackers with her mom and dad. But Sarah couldn't help noticing that something was a little off. Mom and Dad had always laid out enough food to feed a small army at Christmas time, and while there was certainly plenty of the potatoes, pigs and blankets, Yorkshire puddings and vegetables to go around, it was the first year that Sarah could see gaps on the table. And the turkey they bought definitely seemed smaller than last year. Mum and Dad seemed to be acting a bit weird too. They seemed to laugh a little bit too much at the bad jokes inside the crackers. "Right, time to start clearing up," Mum declared so suddenly that Sarah nearly dropped the last chunk of potato down her front. "I'll help," said Sarah, through her mouthful, stacking the empty plates. "Oh, don't be silly, dear," said Mom, taking the plates from her. "You should go and play. You've got all of your new toys. And I think I can hear your friends playing outside too. Go on, go and enjoy yourself." Sarah stood with her arms still outstretched as Mom and Dad gathered the crockery and headed for the kitchen sink. Sarah couldn't remember a time when they had ever refused her help, and she should know she'd offered it a lot this year. Not helping now felt weird. What was going on? Without a word, she stepped out of the kitchen and was halfway up the stairs when she heard a strange noise. Crying. Sarah tiptoed up to the top step and peeked through the banisters and into the kitchen. Mum was sat on a chair, with Dad kneeling next to her and holding her hands. "It's just, she's been so good this year," Mum sobbed. "And she couldn't get what she wanted. She must really hate this Christmas." Dad held Mum in a hug, and Sarah crept up the last step and slipped into her bedroom. Her face felt hot, and her heart was beating fast. Why? Why did her parents feel bad? It wasn't their fault she got an old Uberwoman for Christmas. That was Santa. In fact, now she came to think about it, what did her parents get for Christmas? Sarah remembered that they always got a little nice something every year. Dad got a watch last year, and Mum got a necklace. But this year, she hadn't seen any presents under the tree for them. And how about Christmas dinner? It was definitely smaller than last year had been, definitely. Sarah wasn't silly, though. She knew that things had been tough for Mum and Dad at work, and money was really tight this year, but that made Sarah even more suspicious. Mum and Dad have worked as hard as I have. Why couldn't Santa give any of us a good year? What did we all do so wrong to deserve this? Sarah frowned, and she stomped over to her small desk and pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. Her hand shook because she was so angry, but she knew exactly what she wanted to write. Dear Santa, I hope you are enjoying your nice rest after all of your hard work delivering presents to all of the so-called good boys and girls. I am just writing to you again to let you know that I, Sarah Pebbleton, aged 7, will be suing you for not doing your job properly and ruining our family's Christmas. Me, my mom, and my dad have all worked so hard this year, and you have just made us all feel really, really bad. I will start doing all of the legal important things tomorrow, and I will be coming to the North Pole in person to come and speak to you. Actually, I will start going to the North Pole tomorrow, so you had better be ready, Mr. Claus. And no, I won't bring you any cookies and milk. From Sarah Pebbleton, aged 7. She folded the letter up and was just about to put it in a pink envelope when she stopped herself. No, this was a serious letter. It couldn't go in a pink envelope. All of the professional and grown-up white envelopes were downstairs in the unit under the TV. If she went down to get one now, she might be asked what she was doing, and that would lead to all kinds of awkward questions. No, she didn't want to stress out her parents any more than they already were. This was her personal fight. She was going to sue Santa. She would wait until tonight, when the time was right. The second Sarah's alarm woke her up, she slammed a hand on it, and it fell silent. 3 a.m. She was so sleepy, and it was so cold outside of her bed, that she almost fell back asleep. But then the memory of her mum crying swept over her, and she was wide awake. Shuddering as she slipped into her ice-cold clothes, she picked up her letter and crept downstairs, wincing every time a step gave a loud creak. She peered into the living room. Sometimes Mum and Dad would fall asleep in here or watch a movie late at night. But tonight it was pitch black inside. She pushed the door open and walked over to the TV. Pulling a drawer open, she dug through the pile of old batteries, wires, and bits of paper until she found a clean, white envelope. Something moved in the corner of her eye, and she gasped as she swung around. Tinder the cat sat on the sofa, swishing her tail and looking at her with narrow yellow eyes. "Stupid cat," Sarah muttered as she slipped her letter to Santa into the envelope and licked it shut. She pulled a pen out of the drawer, then another, and another until she found one that worked, and wrote, "To Santa, North Pole," in her best writing on the front. Does this need a stamp? No, it should be fine. I've sent letters to Santa without stamps before. Besides, I don't want to pay any money to send letters to him. She slipped out into the hallway and headed for the front door. Now for the tricky bit. The wind howled outside, and snow still fell past the door's window. She slid into her Wellington boots and pulled on her warmest jacket, gloves, and woolly hat. Even with her gloves on, she could still feel the cold door handle making her fingers cold. She took a deep breath and pulled the door open. The wind roared, and snowflakes blew into the hallway. Sarah stepped out into the night and closed the door as quickly yet quietly as possible. For a moment, she held an ear to the door to check if her parents would wake up, but she couldn't hear anything. She turned and faced the snowstorm. Even with all of her thickest clothes on, Sarah had never felt so cold. Snow whirled all around her. It was so thick on the ground that every step came up to the top of her boots. Luckily, the nearest postbox wasn't far. She headed up the driveway and towards the end of the street. Maybe it was just her imagination, or maybe all of the snow made it look that way, but the street seemed longer than usual. Sarah felt as though she'd been tramping through the snow for an hour by the time she reached the postbox. She wiped the snow off of the letterbox and checked the timetable bolted to the front. It was difficult to read in the dim yellow streetlight, but she could just make out the next pickup time, 5 a.m. She pulled the envelope from her pocket and, before she could think twice about it, pushed the letter into the postbox. There! Done! Let's see what you say to that, Mr. Claus. She turned and nearly leapt on top of the postbox in shock. A postman stood over her, his dark uniform so perfect that not a single snowflake dared to land on it. He had no gloves, no scarf, but he wasn't shivering. A brown sack was swung over his shoulder. "Good morning, young lady," he said, tipping his hat. He didn't shout over the howling wind, but Sarah heard him perfectly clearly. "What are you doing out at this hour?" I was going to ask you the same thing," Sarah asked, crossing her arms and trying to look brave. "It's a bit early to be picking up the post, isn't it?" "Normally, yes," said the postman, "but I've been told to come here because of some very important mail." Sarah's mouth fell open. Then she immediately regretted it as cold snow flew in and stuck to the back of her throat. You know about my letter?" The postman nodded with a grin. "But how?" Sarah scratched her woolly hat. "I only just posted it." The postman laughed so loud that Sarah thought that half the street would wake up. "Oh, my dear, I'm not here to collect your letter. No, that's been done already. I am here to give you your reply. Now, let me see." The postman swung the bag off of his shoulder and began to rummage through the pile of letters inside, while Sarah shivered with cold and fear. Santa had replied already? But how? She knew the old story of how Santa could see all of the children in the world in one night, but this, seeing it for herself, was something else. Suddenly she didn't feel so sure about suing Santa. He didn't sound like the kind of guy Sarah wanted to get on the wrong side of. What if she wrote him a quick apology now? Maybe that would get to him just as fast. "Ah, here it is!" The postman pulled out a red envelope, and with a bright smile, handed it over to Sarah. "To Sarah Pebbleton," it said on the front in big, loopy writing. Hand shaking, she tore it open and read the golden letter inside. "Dear Sarah, thank you for your kind message. It looks like we have a lot to talk about. Please come to my workshop in the North Pole right away. Here are some special tickets. They will get you where you need to go. The only thing I ask is that you please visit 3 houses on the way here. You will understand why soon. I look forward to meeting you. Yours, Santa Claus." The letter shook in Sarah's hand so much that she nearly forgot about the strange postman standing in front of her. She read it at least 2 more times before she finally said anything. What does it mean, special tickets?" she stammered. She looked up, and the postman had suddenly disappeared without a trace. She looked down at the letter again, except it wasn't a letter anymore, but 4 golden tickets. Sarah felt a warm glow on her back. She turned and saw a golden light spilling out of the letterbox, as though there was a bright and sunny day inside. She tried to peek through, but the light blinded her. Then she spotted the door handle on the postbox. She looked up and down the street one more time. Empty. Was she dreaming? But she couldn't be. This cold felt very real, nipping at her nose and making it runny. For some reason, she knew what to do. She took one ticket and slid it into the postbox. Instantly, the little door swung open, but instead of a pile of letters pouring out, that warm light washed over her, and it was just like a nice warm bath. Without thinking, she pocketed the other 3 tickets and stepped forward into the light. End of part 2.